This is the Houston Football Show, brought to you by the Prime Social Poker Club and Inside Edge, with your hosts, Aaron Wilson and Jason Braddock.
That's right. We're back here, Season 1, Episode 9. Jason Braddock along with Pro Football Network's NFL Insider, and here locally in Houston, KPRC2 and Sports Talk 790's Texans Insider. Aaron, welcome in.
Thank you, Jason.
Oh, absolutely. We'll get right into all the action. We want to thank Jonathan Danger Cole and Mark Larson for the production of tonight's episode, as always, from iLogic Media. Now we got to get right into it because we got a lot to talk about. Before we look back at last week, as we typically do, and look forward to the next, Aaron, let's catch up with where the roster's at. And first, the latest news that's come out, Justin Britt, there's kind of been a holding pattern with his name and what's going on with him on the Texans. Little clarity came out today. Can you catch us up with all the ins and outs?
Yes, Jason. Yeah. While respecting his privacy, I'll say as much as I can. They placed him on the reserve non-football illness list, and he is upset with his performance in the first game, but that was sort of the trigger. It was an emotional moment for him. Did not perform the way he hoped for, didn't live up to his own personal standard, had some problems. That's all been documented, how he played in the game. And it's the reaction to it that is why he's been absent from the team. And the team wants to give him some time and space to work through things, contemplate his options. Obviously, retirement could be one of those options, and that's a consideration. So he'll make his plans, think about what he wants to do. In the meantime, it's a next man up mentality. This league doesn't really wait for anyone, obviously. You know, he has to take care of himself, take care of his family, and the Texans have to move forward, and they already have with Scott Quesenberry named the starter against the Denver Broncos. And he'll continue to start as long as he's healthy and effective, and I thought he held up solidly against one of the better nose tackles in the NFL, and DJ Jones of the Broncos. It wasn't a perfect performance. It would have been really amazing if it had been. It was solid. I thought he held his own. And
exactly.
Then, for Justin, he's under a 2-year, $9 million contract. They have the option to not pay him. I start understanding that they will pay him while he's on the non-football illness list. If he was to retire, then he wouldn't be due, obviously, his salary. So we'll see what happens. It's not really a financial thing, though. It's more just with Justin, the team wanting to give him some time and space. They've respected his process. And I'm told that he's very upset, and it's an emotional moment for him. He's played football all his life. He's 31 years old. He's had a really good career. He's one of the toughest guys around. And sometimes your body just won't let you do, what the mind wants it to, because, he's had a serious knee injury, and that's bothered him for the past couple of years. And, I think he headed into this year thinking he could make it through the season. He didn't play any preseason football, so it really wasn't tested in game action. And when he did get to game action, it just, he came up wanting. And I think, for Justin, it's just a really difficult reminder of what it takes to play the game. And it's not just physical, it's mental as well. And, there's no shame in this. This is a person's life. There's some things more important than football.
100%.
And Justin, I just wish him well. I did shoot him a text last week expressing my support and respect for him. And that's been about, it. I haven't had any contact with him. I've texted with him previously, and, we'll see, if Justin at some point has something to say, but, we're going to give him his, respect his privacy and space. Obviously,
100%. Let me ask you this, Aaron.
Yes.
With Justin Britt, without putting you too much on the spot, if you can't elaborate further, that's fine. But I think you mentioned something in there as far as the reaction to his play. Is that more so his own personal reaction or the public reaction?
Yeah, it's his reaction, not so much. I don't think again, I can't speak for him. I don't know
Right. I
what
understand.
consumed as far as media, social media. I think there were probably harsher reactions on social media from fans than there were
Always.
from
Right.
reporters, which is generally the rule. What I saw from press coverage was people volleyballing back, him being accountable for his mistakes. I thought he was a stand-up guy. I believe
100%.
you were there for that press conference as well,
Right.
the previous Tuesday at NRG Stadium, and I thought if anything, I was like, wow, he's very despondent about this.
I
He's
was thinking the
sad.
same thing.
Yeah, and he
He was
had
100% accountable. So let me say this, Aaron, just to get it off, because we always talk about the human element on here, and I think you've stated it perfectly with Justin. I do want to add my 2 cents. I do put film up. I go in and evaluate the film, and in my opinion, the film is what the film is. I try not to go too much on a tangent of bashing a guy if it's bad. Maybe I should choose my words carefully, but if it is the public reaction, I played any part in that. My apologies to him because I do respect the human element, but it sounds more like him holding himself more accountable than anything else because it did catch me a little bit by surprise. Because that press conference, like you said, he was out there forefront, took 100% accountability, and best wishes for him, whatever he decides. I just want to state that.
absolutely well said. And yeah, we at the podcast and everyone, I think in Houston media is wishing Justin well. Justin's one of the good guys.
One hundred
Let's
percent.
not lose sight of this. This is a guy that's a dad and a father and a good man and has all the respect of his teammates, and they're pulling for him.
Absolutely.
And one of the reasons that you saw the linemen, they were playing cards and they were kind of staying to themselves, they didn't really want to discuss Justin. This is upsetting. He's very close to Tyson Howard,
That makes a lot of
Larry
sense now.
Tunsil, a lot of these guys. So this was something where they were sad to not have their brother with them, and they were hurting for him.
That's
And
interesting. That's interesting. I don't mean to cut you off, Aaron, but and we'll move along here
yep,
shortly. But it's interesting you mentioned that he's close with Titus because this past week Titus didn't look like Titus. Now, by most people's standards, he had a good game, but Titus Howard and how he plays, the vengeance, how you watch a guy for years, you understand how he moves and what he does, and it almost looked like mental mistakes added, and it makes sense marrying that with what you're saying, him being close with Britt. Like we look at these guys as gladiators, especially on the line in the NFL, but these are humans with human emotions. And Titus has one of those big teddy bear, lovable personalities. I could definitely see this, the Brit what's going on with Justin Britt affecting him now, hearing that they are close. Now, moving on a little bit, catching up the roster before we look back at what happened in Denver. Kevin Pierre-Louis, growing injury, saw that the Texans did place him on IR this year. I don't know the severity, Aaron. I'm not sure if you've heard the severity on this or not. Is he one of the candidates to return later, or because of the depth at the position or the severity of the injury that he's probably out for the year at this point?
I haven't heard if he's going to need surgery or if it's going to be something that he can recover from. I think he'll need all of the 4 weeks. He was carted off the field. It was a pretty painful
Absolutely. Right.
groin pull. So, yeah, I expect him to be down. And during this time, this is an opportunity for someone else to establish themselves. And in my opinion, the next man up should be Garrett Wallow. Garrett's had
Interesting. I
enough
was going to
time.
go there after the KPL injury. Would he
Yeah.
say he's been inactive 2 weeks? And speaking on injuries, do you feel like he's 100%? That's mostly why he was inactive. We saw Blake Cashman step in for the most part when Kevin Pierre-Louis went out. But you believe Wallow's healthy? Not only will he be active, but he's the next guy up.
Yes, I think that could happen. I'm not reporting that, but
Sure,
I
I
think
got
that's
you.
their top option, and we'll know as the week goes on if that's how they're going to go with it. But Neville Hewitt is another possibility, but he's more of a Mike linebacker, so we'll see how they go about replacing Kevin Pierre-Louis. Keep in mind they are in two linebacker sets quite a bit, so
Right.
the third linebacker is not always in the field. They're in nickel a lot.
Yeah, sub package is probably about 70% of the time, rough estimate. Going to the offensive side of the ball before we hit our first break, and you'll stick with us through the break. Our title sponsor, just 1 minute of your time here during the show. We'll hit that here in a second. And as we always ask you, please um, go check out InsideEdge.com, Prime Social Poker Club if you're in the Houston area. If give positive feedback to our sponsors because we want to continue to grow this, and we're glad that they've partnered with us here and bought into the Houston Football Show brand. Now, finishing up on injuries real quick before we get to that first break, Brevin Jordan, Tyler Johnson, two different guys here, and for two different reasons I'm interested. Brevin Jordan was blocking on a play early week 1, got rolled up on, missed some time in practice last week, went into the game and did play, but again left with injury. The severity of this, and I do notice that he wasn't placed on IR, so that's good news there.
Right. With him, it's a deal where, the ankle has been bothering him for a couple of weeks now.
Right.
And, he's been able to practice with he returned to practice. He was able to finish the game. It wasn't like he was carted off the field. So I think the way Lovie Smith characterized it was he injured his ankle just a little bit. Okay. So he tweaked it. I would expect him to probably be available. We'll see how he feels at practice Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, if he's able to participate. They have depth at his position. I think Jordan Akins is just as good, if not better. So, I think they've got a good option there in Akins, or if you want more of a blocker, you have Mason Schreck,
right?
Who's a bigger guy, but not much of a receiver. But when you think about the, Brevin and these guys, they're not being utilized a lot. I mean, the top receiving options are Pharaoh Brown and OJ Howard. So the third tight end is what we're talking about in this case. It's not exactly a, hot button personnel issue, but, it's something that, they'll have a few things to do. With the injured reserve situation, you can up a few people and the non-football illness for Justin Britt. Jimmy Morrissey is a top candidate to be promoted.
Okay.
You then have Scott Quesenberry start, and then Justin McCray is a top backup for all three interior line positions with Kenyon Green now the starting left guard, as we reported last week. So it's I would say there are going to be a few more changes, and they did work out a couple of offensive linemen, Parker Ferguson, Keaton Sutherland. Tyrone Wheatley Jr. was supposed to work out, but he just did a visit because he signed with the Cleveland Browns. So they could fill, if they promote Jimmy Morrissey, which I think they will, then they have some linemen waiting in the wings. They could sign one of them to add to the practice squad.
I hope they sign Kiefer Sutherland. I loved him in 24. Must have really put on some weight trying out for that O-line position. Lastly, before we move on to here, take this.
Can you do a Kiefer Sutherland 24 impression?
You? Yes.
This is Kiefer Sutherland. That wasn't very good.
What is that? You know what? I'm off topic now. I need a break. Go ahead. Let's hear a quick word from our sponsors while I gather myself from the Kiefer Sutherland impression.
Come out and enjoy Houston's longest-standing poker room with a stellar reputation for class and quality, Prime Social Poker Club. At Prime, you'll enjoy an upscale social environment, fully stocked bar, gourmet dining, pool tables, dozens of poker tables, and many other fun games throughout the venue. You can also join their over 21,000 members with a lifetime membership for only $10. What are you waiting for? Get into the game. Come join us at Prime Social Poker Club. Inside Edge was founded over 30 years ago as a data and analytics provider for Major League Baseball clubs. If you've seen the movie Moneyball, then you know Inside Edge. They were part of the data and analytics revolution in professional sports. Fans can now have access to the same insights and analytics used by pro teams for free at myinsideedge.com. My Inside Edge is a destination for sports bettors and daily fantasy players where they can find matchup-specific insights and projections to help make informed betting and fantasy decisions. Again, that's myinsideedge.com.
All right, we're back here again. Check out Prime Social Poker Club here in Houston and Inside Edge, myinsideedge.com. All right, and we got to look back before we look forward here. What happened in Denver? And the stat that's really made the rounds, Texans plus 23 through the first three quarters in week 1 and week 2 this season, minus 27 there in the fourth quarter. What's happening there, and what are we seeing?
Well, it doesn't seem to be a fatigue issue to me. It's more so that they have a lot of 3 and outs on offense. They are Davis Mills is 5 for 16 in terms
Ouch.
of accuracy
31%.
combined. And then, it's outscored, as you said, 27-0 combined margin. And the defense is gassed. They're tired from all the lack of long sustained drives. So they're on the field. They don't substitute very much. And you've seen the snap count. So the Jalen Petries and the Derek Stingleys, they're playing every snap. And they do rotate the defensive line, which I'm glad to see, because otherwise you don't get guys like Rasheem Green on the field and he doesn't get a sack if you just play the front four the whole game. They need to incorporate some other DBs, in my opinion. And, obviously that means some drop off in talent, but you've got to sub and you've got to be able to run the ball longer. And Davis Mills has got to start looking at other receivers, not just Nico Collins and Brandon Cooks. One of the problems, and this was not in the fourth quarter, but the missed opportunity on the touchdown. They're in the red zone one time. They have one chance to score. And instead of running it, they chose to pass. They don't think they can run on them inside. Okay, I understand. You're doing that, and he wheels very quickly and throws a low pass. It was catchable, but it wasn't a great throw. And it was on Brandon Cooks pretty quickly, and Brandon uncharacteristically doesn't bring it in. Chris Moore was wide open, but that was not his first read. That was his second read. And so, Davis, then he's incomplete on the next one. And he's got to be more accurate. And, I think there's something of a regression from the way he ended last season. Obviously, also people have watched tape of him, and they've had a chance to study him more, and you're not going to get a book on him. The pass protection is not great, but it's adequate. It's good enough. It's not like he's on the ground all the time. And there are some breakdowns here and there. The other team, they're good. Randy Gregory, Bradley Chubb, DJ Jones. These guys are tough to block. And, there's just a few things that go wrong. That's the reason why they're not 2-0. They should be 2-0 right now and fighting with the Jaguars for, surprise, surprise, the lead in the AFC South, because the Colts are off to a bad start. The Titans are off to a bad start, and there's an opportunity here. They could get in the mix, but they have to beat the Chicago Bears for them to get in the mix, for them to
absolutely.
They got to start winning some games. And it's like Levy said, I thought he said it very well. Before you can win games, you have to stop losing them. They are their own worst enemy. A lot of unforced errors, a lot of penalties, a lot of issues, some pass coverage breakdowns like 3rd and 16. I'm starting to question more and more, was that Jonathan Owens on that pass to Cortland Sutton? Was he dropping too deep and creating too big of a seam in that cover 2 zone? Because a lot of people, thought, that's on Stingley. It's not only on Stingley, it's on both of them, but it looked like there's some culpability from the safety. And great play by Cortland Sutton, and everyone was asking about Stingley's performance. It was solid. It wasn't great. He did get picked on some. He's playing against a gigantic wide receiver, almost 6'5", 220.
I want to get to that. Yeah. Well, let me pitch that to you in a second. But before we get to that, the matchup against Sutton, we always hear evaluators, front office people talk about what they'll go and watch film, and they also look at analytics, and what they explain that they're doing. The reason for that is marrying what they see with stats, because stats lie and your eyes will lie to you, believe it or not. So marrying the two is like, I'm seeing this, what do the stats say, or vice versa? And so everything we're talking about the fourth quarter, what are making those stats that way? The Texans minus 27 in the fourth after being up plus 20 in the first 3 quarters through 2 weeks. Well, on offense, they've only run successful plays 19% of the time. That's second to worst in the NFL. And then on the defense, they've given up successful plays 59% of the time. That's worse NFL. I mean, that's both sides of the ball there. So let me ask you something before I say it. I'm playing devil's advocate here. I don't believe this, but let me see if I can convince you to something else. Week 1, what the sell was on why the Texans broke down in the fourth quarter was 90 plays. Jonathan Taylor, that O-line just really wearing on them, beating them down. And there's truth to that, obviously. But outside of that, you look at week 2 and they get beat down in the fourth quarter. And we're not talking much about mile high. Could it be something? You say conditions not an issue, but could it be something for the second straight week, something freaky that's happening, whether it's the elements or the workload, or is this just something that in the fourth quarter is choke time?
I don't think it's as much stress or physical conditioning as it is a team that's just sort of ineffective. And there is some fatigue, but it's not the only factor you can chalk it up to. And the play calling, in my opinion, from Pep Hamilton has to improve too. They've got to have
Fair
better
enough.
things
Yeah,
dialed up. You need to save some things sometimes for the
that's
fourth
true.
quarter. And I think, if anything, we're seeing him play his hits early in the game, and he needs something up his sleeve. You script a lot, of course, but you need some things, and you need to be able to adjust and adapt and, feel how the game is going. The thing about this offense is, and now that Damian Pierce is kind of playing the way he can, and they're blocking well, and
Right.
he's being a little more patient as he was into the first game, but this time he's letting his holes develop. If you don't have Pierce, what do you have? You're completely one-dimensional.
Exactly.
So this just isn't a very good offense, and I think they have the makings of a defense. They're not a very good run defense, but they have a solid defense. They have a decent pass rush. They have some better pass than they did a year ago. This just still feels like a very incomplete team to me, Jason. That's just still very much in a rebuilding mode. Nothing
Well,
really has changed. They are who we thought they are.
Now let's get back to one thing we were touching on just a little bit ago. You talked about Stingley versus Cortland Sutton, and one thing you talked about the Texans not being able to stop the run, but it's not only that they can't stop the opposing team's number one wide receiver. Now they catch a break this week with Chicago not having, they've got an odd look at the roster where they decided to go with no wide receivers. Obviously, a little hyperbole, but seriously, truly, no number one in Chicago, and that's a blessing for Houston. But I'm curious, Aaron, and yes, it's a little bit hindsight, maybe not, but Derek Stingley Jr. has given up the 7th most receiving yards in the NFL, and he's been thrown at more than any other DB in the fourth quarter. As you mentioned, he's been picked on and targeted a little bit. So my question and my problem is not with Derek Stingley. My question is with the coaching staff that knows this is a rookie that just worked 90-plus plays last week, didn't get a lot of work in the preseason and stuff as they were careful with his workload. When Jerry Jeudy goes out early in this game, why is Derek Stingley the one that's primarily on Sutton for the majority of the game? And mind you, Steven Nelson has only given up 5 receptions on 11 targets this year. That's the 10th best among qualified DBs. And why not put him on the wide receiver who's caught 56% of the receiving yards from Russell Wilson in this game?
Right. I think that's a valid question because they could have switched.
Right.
What they've been doing is they've been playing each side, not always shadowing. And, you primarily are winding up with, so first it was Michael Pittman, and he had a good game.
Right.
And then it's, Cortland Sutton. And in both cases, he's facing a bigger, taller wide receiver that has, you could make an argument they have the number one, capability. Pittman is the featured guy. He's been very productive. He's hurt now, but, you look at everything that they're trying to do, and I think he needs a little more help. I think the safeties need to help him a little more over the top. And, he's all by himself out there.
Yeah, it's not only them. The Texans
he's completely
secondary.
poised, though. I would tell you this. I like his reaction. He just keeps fighting and battling, and he'll get better.
These are and we're going to evaluate. The NFL is not like baseball where you got a game every day. You've got a week in between. You're going to talk. You're going to evaluate. I mean, with Derek Stingley, we're telling you what the tape says now, what we see, and Aaron's able to tell you a little bit behind the scenes on different stuff, and also break news for you and all that. It's content, it's entertainment, all that. But don't get carried away. This is still a young kid. My oldest daughter is Derek Stingley Jr.'s age, and he's going through trial by fire. So the criticism isn't more on Stingley there. It's more on the decision to place him in Sutton. If you're like, well, we want that trial by fire. Well, you're in games and you're in a division contention where one win, you got one win in the entire division. So I don't think you go trial by fire there. Instead, you try to get the win. And I think Steven Nelson would have solidified that for him. I mean, again, hindsight, maybe I'm wrong. That secondary, though, Aaron, great.
Steven will let you know, as he has said before, I've been a number one corner.
Right.
And
100%.
he's right.
100%.
I tend to think that his game is better right now than Derek's. I don't think that's a big stretch.
It's not even a question. No.
I would think about it, and I wonder if they will.
Yeah,
Because if you're seeing it, they're seeing it too.
yeah,
But the
Stingley's
big thing
upside's
is,
insane, but yeah, Steven Nelson's definitely ahead of
it's
Derek
just the
Stingley
big
right
picture.
now.
But I did like the way he played. Obviously, it wasn't a touchdown; it was overturned, but he was right there. I
Right.
think he's close. And the thing about it is, maybe you let him keep playing, keep competing, and keep getting better. But you've got to win some of these games.
Yeah, and I
And there may have
wouldn't.
been a way to do that. And I don't think he would have had a problem with it. I don't think it has anything to do with protecting him or his ego or
No.
whatever. But this week, they've only had 15 completed passes out of 28. The Bears, they run the ball. And this isn't a good Texans team running the ball. They've got to slow down. David Montgomery's already got
Well, let
148
me ask
yards.
you about that. So, and put in, a bow on the secondary. They gave up 9 receptions of 20-plus yards in 2 games. That's the most in the NFL, and I think that ties in perfectly with what Aaron was saying. It's not just on Stingley. The secondary, especially in zone looks, they have to find that chemistry quickly. Now, you talk about the running game. The Texans have been gashed, whether it was Jonathan Taylor, Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams. But you mentioned they went with 5 D tackles this past week. Also, Rasheem Green can kick inside as well. Roy Lopez, Malik Collins, Kurt Hinish, Thomas Booker in his first action, Michael Drumford, all of those guys rotating in, staying fresh. Pass rush, Rasheem Green would kick in on the interior as well. But second straight week, the 5 worked. They clogged the middle. But when you clog something, it's going to squeeze out somewhere. It's going to squeeze out to the edges. And for the second straight week, the Texans have no contain. Aaron, what is going on here? And will they come in this entire week with the focus on keeping the contain on Montgomery and Khalil Herbert?
Well, yeah, you would hope so, that they would, do a better job of setting the edge. And what it's going to take to do that is just fundamental football. But you can't just race into the backfield. You really have to, be a stay-home football player sometimes. And the linebackers, they've got to get outside. They got to run with these backs.
They've got to feel.
And David Montgomery cannot just run outside. He's good at running inside. He's not the biggest back, but he's got a little bit of power, and he's got a lot of wiggle. He's a lot of moves. And as much as Jonathan Taylor challenged them, and so did Javonte Williams, this back is a little more like Javonte, but it's quicker and harder to find. He is very short. He's a unique back, a good back. I think it's going to be tough.
And no sleep on Khalil Herbert. Very instinctual.
He's a good backup.
Yeah, I think he's very instinctual. 6th round pick. I had him a lot higher than
here's
that.
The thing. They've got to also worry about containing Fields, because Fields can take off and run.
Great. Well said. Well said.
Yeah, but Fields' passing is deficient.
Yeah, he's only had 7 and 8 completions.
Yeah, he's about a 50% passer.
Right.
This is a game that really, if they can at least slow down Montgomery, prevent him from running wild, and block Roquan Smith and not let him blow up their running plays, they have a chance to win this football game. I think they're better in a lot of areas, and I like the matchup for them.
All right, and Texans getting 3.5 on the road. We'll get in that matchup in a second, but before we look ahead and before we get to this next quick break here, let's examine the quarterback here. I want to do a quick little segment on Davis Mills, because you touched on it perfectly earlier. Something's definitely wrong with Davis Mills. We can talk about the penalties of the O-line, the drop touchdown, anything you want to go, but there's an issue with Davis Mills, and that's your signal caller. And if Davis Mills, what he's done in the fourth quarter has been horrific. You talked about 5 for 16 for 75 yards in the fourth quarter, only 31% completion. I mean, that's sick. I mean, not positive. I mean, that's horrific. But it's not only that. He's second guessing. He's rattled, and he doesn't even look like the same guy. The first 3 quarters of the game, week 1 and week 2, he's only been sacked 3 times. In the fourth quarter, in week 1 and week 2, in the overtime there in week 1 as well, he's been sacked 5 times, almost twice as much, and it's just 2 fourth quarters in the overtime as opposed to the 6 quarters of first through third the first 2 weeks. It's on him. He's holding the ball too long. He doesn't trust himself, and he's got the yips on sideline passes. Aaron, last year, Davis Mills, Next Gen Stats shows you what a player completed. Last year, he completed 66.8 completion percent as a rookie. And I think this goes to you talking about the regression. Well, The next gen stats said his expected completion percent on those passes was 66.3. He was actually plus 0.5 over the expectation of what he should have completed. This year, the expected completion is 66.2 on his passes. He's only completing 56% of those passes. That's a minus 10.2. That's a regression. There's no other way to slice it. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. You're absolutely right. And what they have to do is, get him into a rhythm. And sometimes that can mean slants, outs. Let the
Yes.
receivers do some work after the catch. I think
How
he's
about
got to get
Damian
back to rhythm.
Pierce?
Yeah. Throw it to Pierce, hand off to Pierce, hit the tight ends with a pop pass. Do some things that you are capable of doing. And I think he's got to crawl before he can walk again and rebuild his confidence a little. He would probably tell you his confidence is exactly the same. I don't know. I think only Davis would truly know that, but
True.
The success is not there. And I don't want to jump to any conclusions, but the early returns are not encouraging. If this was a guy running for office, he'd be trailing in the polls.
Okay. Okay. So, I like the analogy.
I think he's got to get better, and he's a resilient guy. He did improve last year, but there were some times, remember, where he looked fairly hopeless last season. He doesn't seem hopeless to me. He just seems like he's off to a rough start, and we have to see, can he play his way out of it? And you got to give him the rope to do that.
Yeah, and he has struggled on the road as well. So this past week's struggle isn't anything that we're unfamiliar with. He has 4 touchdowns and 9 interceptions on the road, 61% completion. That improves 8% to 69% at home with 14 touchdowns and only 1 interception. So, but they've got to win these next 2 road games at Chicago and at Jacksonville, with the only home game before the bye being against the Chargers. So he's got to get over that road weary woes, or I don't know what's going on with all the W's, but we'll get into that. And there is a good little bit of news there. Aaron talked about the Chicago Bears and this being a game the Texans need to win. We'll let it look at how if you want the positive, the Texans were 18.5-point underdogs combined for the first 2 weeks. This is a game they should win. They're farther ahead where most people's expectation was, and this is a winnable game. Just a quick nugget. Davis Mills minus 10.2 expected completion percent. The only quarterback active this week with a worse one at minus 11.6 is Justin Fields. We'll get more into breaking that game down in a second. Before we do that, though, let me take a second out to tell you about one of our title sponsors, Prime Social Poker Club. At Prime, it is the Houston's longest standing poker room with a stellar reputation for class and quality. I went out there this past weekend and they've got jumped on the live stream they have there. So it's got a really cool setup where you have this. Sometimes it's a final table. Mostly it's a live stream cash game on a delay. So if you're wondering, well, why can't you just see while the plays are going on? So there's a delay on that live stream. And then I was able to get on there with Reese, who works there at Prime, a former poker pro as well. I guess you're always a pro once you play poker. And it's just awesome just to hear him break down the game from a pro's perspective. It shows you percents. It shows you all the outs. It's like watching the World Series of Poker, but right here in Houston at 7801 on Westheimer. It's really awesome. If you can't make it out and take advantage of their games, which they have daily and nightly tourneys starting with buy-ins as low as $60 up to $5,000, over 21,000 members, and you can become a lifetime member for only $10. They're open daily, 24/7, 365. Doors open at 10 a.m. They don't close till the last person leaves. Go out there, check them out. Westheimer, right here in Houston, Prime Social Poker Club. And if you can't make it out there, check out the live stream. Really awesome. And I'll jump on there with Reese from time to time as well. That's Prime Social Poker Club. All right, we get right back in the show. We got Aaron for a little bit longer here. Before I let him go, I want him to look ahead to the next week, break down this Bears matchup with the Houston Texans. They really need to win this game. AFC South currently, Jaguars 1-1, Texans 0-1-1, Colts 0-1-1, and Titans 0-2. And why do I go into that? Yes, it's early in the season, but I go into that because I mentioned the Texans were 18.5-point underdogs the first 2 weeks. This week's they're underdogs again, mostly for being win on the road, getting 3.5 points at Chicago. Third straight week, I say take the points, but we'll get in a little bit later on who Aaron thinks wins, who I think wins this game. But more importantly, the AFC South plays one of the toughest divisions in football, the AFC West. Jaguars, 7-point underdogs to the Charger out there in LA. At home, the Titans are 2.5-point underdogs to the Raiders, and the Colts are 6.5-point underdogs to the Chiefs. The expectations for all four of these teams to lose, I think the Texans out of all of them have the best chance to win. Aaron, is it too early in the season to say this is a game they really need to have, especially with the way they've lost those first two games?
It's a matter of perspective. If they're going to, be a team that anyone's going to take seriously this year and think of as a contender in this not great AFC South, then these are the games you absolutely have to have. If this is indeed a year where you're mostly playing for draft position and trying to find who are the keepers and
right.
If basically it is a developmental year, which, it hurts the pain of losing, going through all of that, what it takes to get to, let's say that they do become a team that wins less than 4 games.
Well, what do you think? Do you think they're more like the fan base has been throwing us out there for a while? They're tanking. I don't think they're tanking.
Oh, no, I don't think they're tanking. One of the reasons that they're so tight against the cap is because Nick Caserio is trying to win. Because even his backups make $2 to $3 million. Some of those guys shouldn't, but that's a different story.
This is a team that wants to win.
He's trying to win, and but the cap issues are because he has too large of a middle class.
Yeah.
But very few teams do that where they pay a lot of guys this much. In essence, too, though, you're paying for free agents to join a team that's coming off a 4-13 season. So you're looking at guys that are willing to come here. This isn't like the number one destination, even though I think they've improved the culture, the facilities, the locker room, the vibe here. Everything about the Texans is going in a good direction. It's just a matter of getting more talent onto the roster. I think they got the character and the work ethic
absolutely
right. And I don't – people will say, oh, no, you guys are being homers. No, I'm just saying this as someone that I'm around the guys. I see them in the offseason. I talk to a lot of people. I know that Cal McNair, Hannah McNair, Janice McNair, Nick Caserio, all these people are really into it. And Greg Grissom, some of the business things, I would say like the product on the field, it's got to match what they're doing off the field. But off the field, like good things in the community, good works, the interaction with Uvalde, a lot of things I think are very heartfelt and also a little more fun experience, like the DJ at the games, things like that. Some of the things they've done with media, some of the things we've attended and, some fun stuff. And I actually say this is someone that I look forward to coming over there.
Nice.
Absolutely. I just want to see them win more because you want to cover a relevant team. Obviously my emotions don't change on winning or losing. You just have a job to do. But at the same time, you want to not just be covering a team that loses every week and it's the same type of losing. So you want the story to change as a journalist, and winning a game would change the story and the narrative surrounding this team. But I don't think they're trying to low-key tank or anything like that. I think what they're trying to do is they understand that within the constraints of their budget, the cap space that they have, the fact that they don't have a franchise quarterback, and I say that meaning I don't know if Davis will become one, but he's certainly unproven.
Yeah, it's a fair question.
They just have to get more talent onto this roster. They look like they've had a good draft to me.
I think that's more than I think that's more than fair to say. But yes, I mean it's going to be about 2 to 3 years down the line. But if you're this year, you always get and you can't judge the fans by social media, but you always get the replies on social media like, oh, they're tanking, they're not trying to win these games. And I think you bring up a great point. They just restructured Brandon Cooks. I think you report, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes. They restructured him to create a little bit of breathing room, $544,000. They need that, and they'll keep doing ones like that as they need more money.
Yeah, operating budget through the year.
They're just below $2 million available right now. And if anyone goes to injury reserve, they still have to pay him, and then you have to up someone. So every time that happens, you have to get more money to create enough to pay the players. And that's an issue. It's not cash. It's about cap.
And great, well said there. I'm gonna get you a T-shirt made. I have to trademark it like Geno Smith. You saw Geno trademark his, right? That's just a
Yeah,
smart bit. That's just a smart business decision.
I
And
thought it was good. Yeah,
yeah. We're gonna have to get you. It's about cash, not cap, right, Aaron? Is that the
absolutely.
Aaronism? There we
Yeah,
go. I'm
it's
gonna get that
whatever.
printed up for you. You wear it out there at NRG for me, right?
Okay.
All
like
right,
it.
before we let Aaron get out of here, let me set this up for you, Aaron, and for the listeners as well, just to peel the curtain back. Bears, Texans scoring defenses are both the sixth lowest in the, scoring offenses are the sixth lowest in the NFL, sixth worst, meaning that they're both 14.5. They're both averaging 14.5 points per game. So this shouldn't be a high scoring game. Defenses are actually doing really well. That's what's keeping them in games. Texans are tied for 19th best scoring defense of 18 points a game. Right behind them, tied 11th, are the Chicago Bears at 18.5 points per game. Texans defense ranks well in the red zone, goal-to-goal, third down percent, and points per game, as we just mentioned, top 10 in all those categories. Bears defense, ranks seventh in sacks per pass attempts. So it kind of gives you a little bit. I know you probably need a little pen and paper to go back through the pod and jot it down. If you don't have it all there, most of that is on my timeline at Jason Braddock. And a lot of the breaking news Aaron's is putting out is on his timeline there at Aaron Wilson _NFL as well. But I lay the background a little bit here. And before I get your predictions, we talked earlier about they can't stop opposing ones. Pittman Jr., 9 catches, 121 yards and a touchdown. Sutton, almost parallel numbers, 7 catches, 122 yards. Bears don't have a number one. Their top guys, Equanimous St. Brown, 3 catches on 7 targets, less than 50% completion rate there. 57 yards, 1 touchdown this year. Talked about plugging the middle, but not giving up not being able to stop the contain on the edge and Fields' mobility. I laid it all out there. Texans need to have this win after the loss. Love returning back to Chicago. Thoughts on everything I said there? I know a lot to really process on the fly, but I know you know it anyway. On that, how do you see this game going? And end it with the Aaron Wilson prediction before we let you out of here.
All right, I'm going to go out on a limb here. Texans win a football game, and they improve to 1-1.
Nice.
Even Chicago with a victory. And
are they going to be in first place at that?
It could be. I don't. I got to look at everybody else's matchups, but in my opinion, they win this football game. They take care of business. I don't know about blowout or whatever. To me, just get a win, and I think they're capable of doing it. And if they can't beat the Bears, it's going to be a long year.
Well said. Well said. We're going to end on that note because I think that's perfectly said there. Aaron, thank you for your time, brother. We're going to let you go ahead. I'll see you out there tomorrow morning, and we'll catch you later.
All right. Take care. Bye.
All right. Take care. That's Aaron Wilson, Pro Football Network's NFL insider here locally in Houston, Texans insider for KPRC2 and Sports Talk 790. Before you get up and finish the rest of the show, a couple segments left. Let's take a quick break with our sponsors.
Prime Social Poker Club opens daily at 10 a.m. and doesn't close until the last person leaves. Now, that's 24/7, 365 days a year, so you can always get your poker game on at Prime. Also, daily, free play starting at 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. with happy hour from 4 to 9 p.m. They have daily and nightly tournaments with buy-in starting as low as $60 and going as high as $5,000. Now, check this out. Guaranteed prize money as large as $2 million. What are you waiting for? Get in the game. Prime Social Poker Club here locally in Houston, 7801 Westheimer. We've told you about the endless insights at Inside Edge, but let us tell you about the real gold mine. They're 5-star picks. And in the 2021 NFL season, Inside Edge went 34-14 against the spread for a success rate of 70.8. And now you have access to these 5-star picks for only $20 per pick, or get the deal of the lifetime. Every 5-star pick for the entire year for only $149. Even better, our listeners get a discount of 10% on that access by using code Houston. That's code Houston.
I back in a couple more segments to go this evening. Aaron Wilson, we want to thank him for all he contributes to the show every week here on the Houston Football Show. Don't forget to come back every week, 8 p.m. Central Time. Check us out. And don't forget to tell your mama and them as well. All right, well, let's get into it. We're going to, we're talking about that Bears game, how it breaks down with Aaron. And one thing I wanted to ask him, kind of ran out of time there with is, can they have a clean game? And before we break down, the running back situation and how they can really attack this game on defense, the true question is, can they have a clean game? This game they're coming off against Denver. They were 2 for 13 on third down. Atrocious. I don't ever even say atrocious. Don't even know how to spell it, but that's how bad it was. 2 for 13 on third downs at Denver. Then they had 8 penalties for 94 yards. And when I look at penalty yards that high, I usually do a comparison to the rushing game and see how much it takes away from the rushing game. It it canceled out your entire rushing game on just 8 penalties for 94 yards. You're going negative when you factor in your rushing attack minus the penalties. It's all math. I don't want to dork up the thing for you. I'm a numbers nerd as it is. And going back to numbers, 50% completion rate for Davis Mills. That's insane. That can't happen. Stop it. Brandon Cooks, Aaron talked about that throw earlier, and yes, it should have been a higher throw, just like the Conley throw week one should have been a higher throw. These guys make millions of dollars. And then Brandon Cooks, he probably makes about $1 million a game. Catch the damn ball. It's clear as that. We're moving on. I don't even need to talk about Davis Mills. Can they clean up the game? So everything else we talk about doesn't even matter if they can't play a clean game. It's week 3. The preseason is over. And what I mean by that is teams don't typically take a lot of reps in the preseason anymore. It's been shrunk down from 4 weeks to 3 weeks. And these guys at most, some not even taking any reps together, live reps in the preseason. So it's ugly football. And that carries over into the regular season. I don't even think there's a point of a preseason. Do some joint practices a couple times and then go and build up your chemistry the first couple weeks like we're seeing anyway. At max, these teams, new coaching staffs, new quarterbacks, all of it, at max, they're playing 20 to 50 reps together. Max, as a unit, 20 to 50. Yeah, you're getting a little bit of live bullets, but they're so scared of a meaningless injury in preseason that they're not building chemistry. So when do you build chemistry? Week 1, week 2, typically around week 3, week 4 of the regular season, you start seeing what a team really is. I'm willing to give the Texans a pass. I know the fans, can, especially fanatics, they can be a little harsh and slow to move on, but I'm willing to give them a pass. A lot of that has to do with what the expectations were. Now, you can't just, forget what we knew beforehand. A lot of the same Texans fans that are extremely upset they didn't pull out these 2 wins gave the Texans zero shot. Nationally, they gave the Texans zero shot in these first 2 games. And the Texans are half a game out of first place behind the Jags. That's the Jacksonville Jaguars. For those that may have forgot about them, they do still play in the NFL, and they're in first place in the AFC South. It's up for grabs. The Jags, I would be shocked if they beat the Chargers this week. The Titans, I would be shocked if they beat the Raiders this week. The Colts, you can't convince me they beat the Chiefs this week. And I know the NFL, and we've seen some surprises here and there, and it's been insane, but a lot of that has to do with the preseason football, type football we watched the first 2 weeks of the season. This is week 3. Things are starting to round into shape. And these vet teams like the Chiefs and Chargers, the AFC West, and I know Derek Carr, Devontae Adams new to the team, but they got chemistry going back all the way down to Fresno State. Josh McDaniels, new head coach, man, they were clicking in the preseason. It hasn't carried over to the regular season as much, obviously, but the talent's there. And I would be surprised if the Titans, Colts, and Jags didn't all lose this week. I would be surprised. The Texans game is the one game you look at the AFC South that team really, really should win. And don't get caught up in the 3.5 unless you're gambling on it, and take that 3.5 with a smile like you did the first 2 weeks on the 8.5 and the 10 points you were given with the Texans. They're getting 3.5 because they're on the road. These are 2 bad teams. I just told you about the rankings. They rank almost identical in most areas, except the Texans defense, 4th in red zone, 6 in goal to go situation, 8 on third down percent, 9th in points per game. So, I mean, this team is a little bit underrated because of what's happened in the fourth quarter, and we haven't really looked at their positives. Can they play a clean game? That's what they have to do. And they have to stop the number one wide receiver. They get a blessing this week with not having to do that. You just don't give up the big plays. And I think you can do that because the Texans have talent in that secondary. They're not going against Michael Pittman Jr. and Cortland Sutton this week. And Justin Fields, like Aaron said, he's completed 7 passes one week, 8 passes the next week. Of those passing yards, his top passing game is 120 passing yards, and 51 of that came on one play. Last week he had 70 passing yards, and 30 of it came on one play. You take away those 2 plays, he's got almost only 100 passing yards on the whole season just from 2 big plays. Texans eliminate the big play in the passing game. Force Fields, play close to the line. Jeff, 8 in the box, 9. Screw it. Put 12 people in the box as long as the refs don't call it, because Justin Fields not going to consistently beat you moving the chain. Just don't give up the big strike like you did coming out to start the fourth quarter last week. Now, the biggest thing is I want to look at this running back situation. Dameon Pierce, Rex Burkhead. We talked about it before the preseason. We talked about it in the preseason. We're going into week 3, and we're still talking about this. The Texans, yes, they got Dameon Pierce more involved. But why did Rex Burkhead outsnap Pierce week 1, 50-20? Why is Rex Burkhead the 7th most targeted? No, excuse me. It went up. 3rd most targeted running back. No, let that marinate for a second. I'm going to repeat it, but I want you to just let that marinate. Rex Burkhead. There's not a new rookie or somebody who came in with a similar name. It's the Rex Burkhead you know well. He's the 3rd most targeted running back in the passing game. That is insane, especially when you combine it with the fact that Rex Burkhead's 3.8 yards per touch this year is the 5th lowest in the NFL. So not only is he not getting you on the ground, he's not getting it to you in the air, but you refuse to throw to Dameon Pierce. Dameon Pierce has 1 target in each game, and he caught each pass. And I put the video up of the last one when I was questioning why is he only getting 1 target when Rex Burkhead's the 3rd most targeted running back in the NFL. This ain't Christian McCaffrey. This is Rex Burkhead. Why is he the 3rd most targeted? I need somebody to answer this. There's no sense to this. Why does Burkhead outsnap Pierce by 30 snaps week 1? Why? And if you're throwing the ball to your back when your quarterback's only completing 50% of his passes, why aren't you throwing it to the top back on your team? 2 catches on 2 targets in 2 games with Rex Burkhead, the 3rd most targeted running back. Go to the timeline, add Jason Braddock, look at the effort. He comes out on the flat, catches it, turns, plays with strength and power in his legs, and fights for 8 yards on that catch. And you don't throw him another ball. Check this out. You need more numbers you've already seen it. You know, you're questioning it if you're watching Texans game. Why is Rex Burkhead out there? But let's marry the stats with what your eyes are seeing again. On rushes that went for first downs when they started 7 to 10 yards to go. I worded this horrifically. Let me try this again. 7 to 10 yards to go, rush plays that go for first down. Burkhead is tied for last with 0. 0 first down rushes when it was 7 to 10 yards to go. And you're like, well, that's probably pretty hard to get a first down on. You're right. It's percentage based. And seeing how Rex Burkhead doesn't have 1 to his name, he's 0% and tied for worst in the NFL. Dameon Pierce, though, there's this other 4th-round rookie they drafted. Where do you think he ranks in this? Seeing how we talk about all the 10-plus yard rushes he had at Florida, what he did in the preseason, seeing how he won the starting job over vets as a 4th-round pick as a rookie, what did he do? 7th. 7th in the NFL on rushes that of 7 to 10 yards to go, and he still gets a first down on that rush. He's 7th. Burkhead's last. And remind you, the NFL evaluator and coaches, whoever's making the decision, because I'm not sure on that. I don't know if it's coming from the front office, the head coach, or the OC. But it's definitely not alignment on that, because I can't see this entire organization saying, you know what, week one, what we need to do, we need to give that Rex Burkhead cat about 50 snaps. And in week two, we need to throw him about 3 more passes so we can keep him up there around the third most targeted running back, because nothing says elite receiver like Rex Burkhead. Also, seeing how Rex Burkhead didn't get any rushes in week two, this is going to be mostly a Dameon Pierce stat. Let's let this resonate. And a lot of these stats you hear us use here on the Houston Football Show come from one of our title sponsors, Inside Edge. You can check out their free stats they've now made readily available at myinsideedge.com. Well, they tweeted this one out, and you can check out their timeline at IE_NFL. On rush attempts, on successful rush attempts in week two, the Texans had 58.8%. 58.8% against the Broncos successful rush attempts. That was the third highest rank for a team in the NFL. Third highest. I think you're on something with Dameon Pierce. So then let me ask you this. You've got Dameon Pierce. He didn't have a lot of workload for his talent in college, right? So he comes into the preseason, third day picked in the fourth round on the third day of the draft, not heralded. He impresses so much in the preseason and limited action. And what are we talking about? 10, 15 touches in the preseason? They shut him down because he showed you so much talent. But a guy that had limited work in college, limited work in your offense in the preseason, he's going to make mistakes, especially a fourth round rookie, right? We make excuses for Stingley's excuses and Petrie's missed tackles. And I say excuses, that's harsh. We give them the grace of developing. Rookies are going to make mistakes. Same with Kenyon Green. We've a little bit more grace. With Dameon Pierce, where's the damn grace? Where's the urgency to force Rex? I mean, why is there an urgency to force Rex Burkhead back into the game? I don't understand it. And here's a point that is just going to you're going to find insane. If you haven't read this on my social media yet, you're going to find this insane. So Dameon Pierce, we just read Texans were the third best on successful rushes, 58.8%. So that's Dameon Pierce. You only have to say Texans. But third best, Dameon Pierce this week. And his first, second NFL start, but first, quote unquote, air quotes here, when they actually gave him the ball. Well, in the third game, he makes a rookie mistake. Titus Howard turns around about 3 minutes ago in the third quarter. You can go watch it on NFL Plus. Titus turns around. He's pointing to Pierce to get him lined up wrong. Great awareness for your right tackle, by the way. Points it out, gets him to line up on. Davis Mills points him out. The play's busted. Davis Mills takes it and just dives ahead. Texans, we got to rub his nose in it. Rookie made a mistake. He screwed up the whole play. Rex Burkhead comes in. Okay, I get it. Even though that's a 3rd and 6, and you have a miscommunication with Nico's, that should have been a third down on the next play. We'll get into that a little bit later in the last segment of the evening. But you rub Dameon Pierce's nose in. You screwed up. You messed up the play. You lined up in the wrong spot. Come over to the bench. Rex Burkhead, get in there. That was with 3 minutes to go in the third quarter. This is a one-possession game. At the time, the Texans are winning that one-possession game. 18 minutes of game time left. The running back that was the third best in the NFL with 58.8% successful rush attempts, how many touches do you think he got the rest of the game, those 18 minutes? If you guessed 1, you were correct. 18 minutes left in the game. After he messed up the alignment, they gave him the ball 1 time, and the Texans were up with 3 minutes to go in the third quarter. You have the entire fourth quarter, and at no point was it farther than a 1-score game. Why did they go away from the running game that was one of the most top 3 successful when you base on success rate last week? You go away from it to go to the quarterback who was completing 50% of his passes, and he's only completed 31% of his passes now through the first 2 weeks in the fourth quarter. These losses, you can blame Davis Mills, and he's got to shoulder part of it as the starting quarterback. You can blame O-line penalties, drop touchdowns, drops from the vet receivers, anything you want. But I think the front office, may have to take some blame on the Rex Burkhead stuff. I'm not sure. If I'm a betting man, I'm going to say the front office is going to shoulder some responsibility for Rex Burkhead. Then that means they take responsibility for being 0-1-1 instead of 2-0. Because they could be. And in a division that's up for grabs, you could be one of 4 AFC teams that are left undefeated. They should be, if actually. Let me change the verbiage. They should be. The front office takes responsibility for Burkhead. That's on you. You've had all offseason to upgrade that number 2 running back position. And if Rex Burkhead's the answer, if Damian Pierce screws up late in the third quarter by lining up wrong, it's on you, the front office, that there's not somebody that can step up there in that role whose name is not Rex Burkhead. So it's insane to me. The front office takes blame in not being 2-0. The head coach takes blame in not being 2-0 because Lovey's a defensive-minded guy. It's like watching high school football, the containment that's being given up against Jonathan Taylor, Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon. Go back and watch the tape. Almost all of it is bounced to the outside week 2 in the Broncos. They had 5 D tackles rotating in, stuff in the middle, and all Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon did was get outside the tackle. The edge was never set. And like Aaron said, it's not always on setting the edge. Sometimes you've got those guys diving in and linebackers are coming behind to fill. Where were the damn linebackers? They're not there. And then when there is somebody there, if it gets down to the safety, Petrie's missing tackles. So the running back, Rex Burkhead, front office shoulder some of the blame for not having a true number 2 running back on this roster going into the season. Now, if you get hit by injuries, I get it. Going into the season, everybody knew, fans, media, everyone, probably the head coach and the OC knew. If that's just a hunch, I'm not reporting anything. I'm not an insider like Aaron. When you look at head coach Lovey and allowing his defense for 2 straight weeks not to be able to really do simple things like a high school coach would get fired for not being able to contain on the edges. And Ogbo did better week 2 containing. You saw him come out right at the beginning of the game, fighting to set the edge. Much better. Still has to improve, but much better. And wasn't getting so wide out of his lanes and gaps as well. There's still got to be a lot of improvement. And the whole team, just setting the edge has to improve. This is basic. This is stuff that even with you being early in the year, you shouldn't be seeing. It has to be rectified this week or Texans lose this game. So OC, the play calling, what he's shown, what he's done, knowing that Davis Mills is completing 31% of passes late in the game, or excuse me, in the fourth quarter, and you go away from the running back, Damian Pierce, he got a carry at 3-minute mark. Then he lines up wrong. They bring in Burkhead. Pierce runs off. He gets another carry at 11 minutes and 22 seconds to go in the fourth quarter. And that's his last touch the rest of the game. 1 possession game, 18 minutes of game time, 1 touch. It's silly. But Davis Mills out here chunking up passes where he's taking 5 sacks in the fourth quarter and overtime as opposed to only 3 through third quarters the first 2 weeks. The guy's holding the ball. He's got the yips on sideline passes. About 2 or 3 passes, he left his feet and jumped up like he's Tim Tebow. It's mental. It's not that Davis Mills can't do it. We talked about the expected completion percent and how he was positive 0.5 as a rookie. Now he's minus 10 in his second year. He has regressed, but not physically. It's all mental. And that's not on the coach. That's not on the OC, but it is on the OC when you've got a running back that's running successful rushes 58.8% of the time, third best in the league in that game, and you got a quarterback completing 31% of the pass, and you say, we're going to give this running back one carry the next 18 minutes of game time. 1 carry in a 1 possession game. That's inexcusable. All right, we'll come up, run through a couple quick evaluation and thoughts on the Texans players from week 1, week 2 to end the show. But before we enter the final segment, you've heard us talk about stats all evening long. Those come from our partners at Inside Edge. Inside Edge, if you've ever seen the movie Moneyball, that's who Inside Edge is. They were at the forefront of the analytics revolution in sports 27 years ago when they started partnering with Major League Baseball professional clubs. Now they partner with professional leagues all over the world. They partner with PR departments, your favorite websites. These stats, like, man, how do they research this? Derek Stingley Jr. has been targeted 6 times in the fourth quarter, more than any other DB in the fourth quarter. I'm not out here counting every DB stats. That's from Inside Edge, and you can get that information as well. Whether you work in the media like me, whether you work, fantasy, whether you play fantasy, you do play-by-play, broadcasting. If you're a gambler, all the information's there. This information they give to the top sites. They sell to professional sports teams and PR departments, now at your fingers for free at myinsideedge.com. That's myinsideedge.com. All right, last segment of the night. We've gone a little bit over, so I'm going to run through these quickly. First, we got to get to Kenyon Green. Kenyon got his first start. I think he played well. He made mistakes. The biggest areas we saw, mostly in the run game, he played really well. And you got to remember, this is his first start. Young kid, conditioning issues, reportedly had a concussion as well. Working back, playing against top end NFL talent. So I thought he really played when you take everything into context. But as far as some of the areas, on one play in the running game, first and goal, Damian Pierce gets blown up, stuffed in the backfield by 2 yards, but it's not on Pierce. Both guards, Kenyon Green and AJ Cann, whiff on the run game there to get Damian blown up. But outside of that, there might have been another play or so that could have been better for Kenyon. I can't recall right off in the run game, but it's mostly in pass pro. And in pass pro, that's where we've seen he's needed to develop. So this isn't shocking stuff. But what kind of really stood out to me was the spin move against pass pro. He really struggled to stay in front of that spin move, and also the stun as well. Sometimes he's late responding to that. A lot of that's going to have to do with chemistry, with that offensive line continuously changing over week after week. It's hard to build that chemistry. Then his first start, pro talent, everything else. No signs of concern there, like what you see from him. Even the areas he struggled in is where you expect him to struggle, and you're seeing him growing and develop. I think it was AJ Cann I read from his presser today where he said he's learning, and I'm paraphrasing here, but I believe he said he's learning where to put his hands better, and he's got the power and the pop. So it's going to be a technique thing, and I think it's really going to click. That kid should be playing at a high level in the league for a long time. Nico Collins, this is one. I wasn't big on Nico when he came out the draft. Had a 5th-round grade on him. Texans took him in the 3rd, and then I was a convert. I'll be honest with you, preseason, and I'm rarely ever converted into preseason, but watching him every day, his craft, his work, how he's framing the ball on the sideline, working after practice, everything. I'm like, you know what, Jason? Maybe it's fool's gold, but I'm going to say, let's watch out for this Nico Collins kid. He's really starting to step it up. There was too many things on film where there's miscommunications with him and Davis Mills. And without me being in the huddle, you're right. I don't know if it's completely on Nico, if it's completely on Davis. I can tell you what Nico's routes looked like through the game when he ran similar routes. I can tell you where Mills places the ball in camp typically when they run these routes and when they play off of each other. And I'll just tell you this without putting blame on Davis or Nico. Nico's routes in that game weren't consistently the same. His effort wasn't consistently the same. And I'll leave it at that because this is a guy in the 2nd year early on that we knew was raw. When you got 6'4", 220 with that type of wingspan and movement skills, there's a reason he's available in the 3rd. I was disappointed from what I saw from Nico in the preseason to what I saw from Nico in this Broncos game. And that's a guy that needs to really step it up. They've given him the keys to that number 2 wide receiver position, and I don't know if he's earned it to this point because what he showed in that game was not a number 2 wide receiver in the NFL. Speaking of wide receivers, the vets as a whole aren't helping Davis Mills. Yeah, Davis Mills, 31%. That can't be helped by all these drops. But when your quarterback's struggling, your vet wide receivers need to pick them up. Brandon Cooks, third down week one, 3 and out because the ball goes right through his hands. Week two, touchdown that could possibly help put the game away. You're playing from ahead. You get down there. Now the Broncos are pushing back. You've got a touchdown there that could really help you put this game away instead of settling for another field goal. And he drops it. Now you could talk about, well, it was at his knees. Go back and watch the end zone angle where it goes through both of his arms and hits his stomach. I mean, Brandon. Brandon Cooks would tell you he should catch that 100 times out of 100. The dude's contract, I'm pretty sure he makes $20 million a year around there. Not sure right off the top, but I feel pretty confident he makes around there. There's 17 games in a season, so you're basically making about $1 million a game. No ball should touch the ground, especially when you have 3 to 4 yards of space in, and all you got to do is go down and catch it between your arms and in your chest. Crucial misses there. Chris Conley, we talked all offseason how he caught 21 of 22 passes since coming with the Texans. Had a catch week one. Then he goes up and live. I didn't criticize him. I was like, maybe Kareem. I think it was Kareem in coverage there. Kareem Jackson. Maybe he got his hand on that tip, didn't alter it. You go back and you watch it, and clearly it's just a drop. He frames his hands poorly, misses for a struggling quarterback, vet receiver that's your number 3 guy to drop that big of a play. Another third, I believe that was third down. Might not, don't quote me on that. I might be mistaken on it being third down, but it's definitely another first down conversion, regardless, and another drop. And then the Conley drop, well, it was at his knees. Professional wide receiver. Your job is to catch a football. It is the prime. If you put a resume as an NFL wide receiver, the number one bullet point is catch a football. If it is at your knees and you are in the NFL, you pluck it and keep going. You don't even have to go to the ground. That is on Chris Conley. Should Davis Mills throw a better pass? Yes. That is on Chris Conley. You have to make that catch. That is your job. Jalen Petrie, this kid has all the talent in the world, electric upside. The kid's going to be special. He wants contact. He wants action, but he has to get the technical aspect of tackling, and he'll do it sometimes. He'll run up, perfect form tackle, wrap up the guy, bring him down, fill the hole, and there's going to be a little bit of him. I mean, still another young kid, just like Kenyon Green, just like Damian Pierce, Derek Stingley Jr. These are young guys. I get that. That's not lost on me. So, I'll give him some grace that they're going to evaluate. And he's such an elite talent for such a young kid in the league. But it's just frustrating to watch, and you are costing your teams games at this point. It's just too many missed tackles from week one, more missed tackles week two. And the troubling part of the week two missed tackles is how they come late. And not only the missed tackles, but they've beat into their head to where to kind of do the peanut punch, try to get strips when you can, but knowing loving how he teaches it, you're supposed to wrap up, or a teammate's supposed to have that guy, that ball carrier wrapped up so you can go for the punch, so you can go for the strip. Jalen Petrie, Steven Nelson, multiple guys late in the fourth quarter are just carelessly one-handed ripping at the ball, flying and ripping like a peewee game, giving up 3-5 more yards after every point of contact. And it was that with the containment, the missed sideline passes ritualistically from Davis Mills at this point was just insane to watch. But ending on a couple other things, O-line chemistry. I want to end on a positive thing too next, but O-line chemistry. We talk about Davis Mills, the wide receiver drops, the struggles of the offense, everything like that. And we talk about the penalties, different things with the offensive line. I think all of that's fair. But I think we also got to talk about the lack of chemistry on the offensive line, and it's not their fault. I mean, you've got the injuries, you've got whatever happened with Justin Britt. You've got the talent fall off, guys 1 year from the next. Anyway, if we go back over the last 17 games, if Laramie Tunsil comes out against the Bears at left tackle, Kenyon Green left guard, At center, Scott Quesenberry with A.J. Cam right guard and Titus Howard right tackle. That would be the same starting offensive line for the second straight week. For the first time, 2 weeks in a row with the same starting line for the Texans, first time in 10 games, and the third time in 17 games. That's just 17 games in the season. So in the last 17 games, this will be only the third times that the Texans have had the same offensive line from 1 week to the next. Knock on wood that everybody's healthy and that same unit trots out there. For Damian Pierce to be as effective as he was with this unit its first week together, lack of chemistry and how much Davis Mills was struggling is just insane. And the team just needs to finally do right by Damian Pierce. Uh, yes, you did great week 2 running the ball. You still some reason not throwing the ball, throw him the ball, get him the ball, feed him the ball. Keep it on the run game until Davis Mills can consistently hit the throws in the fourth quarter that he has in the past. Let him get it fixed out mentally because right now he has the yips on those sideline passes. Lastly, say we'll end on a positive note. This guy was probably used to be called when he was with the Texans early on in his career, uh, probably called Mr. Simone Biles. I'm sure he's probably got that a time or two. I think that's fair. At this point, he's the leading tackler in the NFL. And oh my God, Rockets fans, I love you. Please quit coming on my timeline with the reply every week when I tell you about the safety tackles of Jonathan Owens and he's leading the NFL with basic information like, well, if the safety's making the tackle, then that means your front seven. So the guy leads the NFL in tackles. This isn't a number 1 pick. This isn't a first day pick. This isn't a draft. You know what I mean? Jonathan Owens leads the NFL in tackles. And yes, I've watched football long enough to understand that most of the time the safety's making a tackle means he's in the third level of the defense. I think I've picked that up from. So I appreciate you Rockets fans for that nugget there. Obviously tongue in cheek, guys. But with Jonathan Owens, though, it's not just the point I put that out there is that it's crazy. You got the Texans playing. Yes, they played like 160 freaking plays the first 2 weeks. That plays a part in it. And yes, it plays a part that the front seven is letting guys, especially in the running game, get to that third level. But Jonathan Owens is also coming up and he's filling on that second level. And sometimes he's coming up on that first level and plugging in, making stops. But what he's always doing, he's always coming up wrapping up textbook form tackle. Jonathan Owens is a player and he's a find for this Texans roster. That's a steal there. So that's going to do it for another week. I will leave with a prediction here. First week, I went out on the limb. I picked the Texans to win. I was feeling good at NRG watching that game up 20-3. But they came out with the tie, so it didn't make me look completely foolish for going out with the Texans there. But I told you didn't have to ride with me that week. Told you to go ahead and take those points, 8.5. Last week, Texans getting 10. Felt like it was a touchdown game. Had the Texans losing 26-20. You obviously know how the game turned out. They lose by a touchdown there, 16-9 at Denver. This week, Texans on the road. This game statistically matches up identically with the offensive and defensive rating, except when you start talking about down there situations that matter. Third down, goal to go, red zone, points. Texans top 10 in all of those categories, all 4 of those categories. That Texans defense is still being slept on a little bit here. Bears don't have a passing game. Not only, again, I'll tell you like I did the first week, if you're not there with me, you don't feel comfortable with what you've seen the first 2 weeks. I get it. Third straight week, take the 3.5 points. If you're feeling cocky, you're feeling confident, go ahead and take them Texans on the money line. I've got them winning this week, and I've got the Texans winning by 6 points. I haven't figured out the final score, though, but the lack of the passing game and the Texans not having to defend a true number 1 like a Pittman or Sutton and just really focus after 2 weeks on containing the edge and stuff in the box. This is a game the Texans should win. We know they have a small margin of error. They have to win the turnover margin, and they've been doing that. The one positive for Davis Mills, outside of fumbling the ball every time he gets hit, he doesn't turn over the ball on interceptions. A lot of those fumbles have been fortunately recovered for the Texans. But that's going to be it. I got Texans winning by 6 this week. They will be 1-1-1. And in first place of the AFC South, because not only do I've got the Texans winning by 6 over the Bears this week, I've also got the Jags Titans, and Colts losing against the AFC West. It's going to do it for another week. For Jonathan Danger Cole, Mark Larson from iLogic Media, and for my co-host Aaron Wilson, Pro Football Network's NFL Insider, and Sports Talk 790 KPRC RC2's Texans Insider. Excuse me, guys. And myself, Jason Brad. That's going to do it for another episode. Season 1, Episode 9. Come back next week and every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Central Time. That's the Houston Football Show from Prime Social Poker Club and Inside Edge.
This has been the Houston Football Show, brought to you by Prime Social Poker Club and Inside Edge.